All right, welcome everybody. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. I have a bunch of my good friends on and some of the co-hosts and presenters. We have a special guest presenter, Dr. Robert Silverman, who many of you saw his webinar that he and I did a while back. I think you guys are going to get a lot out of this webinar tonight. So we'll get started in just about a minute. We'll give a chance for everybody to get on. I'm going to share my screen so that we can jump right into the presentation. Let me move you guys out of the way. All right. And Christine, if you can just let me know if you can see my screen okay.
Yep, you look good.
All right, good. All right, guys, well, let's go ahead and get started. I'm hoping all the technology works. I think all of us have been forced in the past month to become much better at technology. I wasn't good at to begin with, but I've gotten much better over the past couple of years, and I've gotten even better over the last couple of weeks. So I really appreciate everybody taking the time to be on this webinar tonight in this Facebook Live event. I think we're all in the same position. We're all, at 51 years of age, I've never seen anything like this in my life. And just having a conversation with my boys the other day, my two grandfathers served in World War II. My uncle served in Vietnam. My dad served in the military. And it seems like this is the crisis, or could be the crisis of our lifetime. Let's hope that it is, because to be quite honest, we haven't really had to sacrifice our lives like many Americans did in those wars. But I still think it's a time that we are all it's stunned. And I also think it's a time that we need to see what's going on and reach out to the experts in the field that can help us to really understand, what we should be doing right now, because I think fear breeds a lot of uncertainty, and uncertainty breeds fear, right? And it's a vicious cycle. And this morning I have I have some weird dreams sometimes, but I also have some great dreams. And I don't know if you guys have this experience, but I have a lot of cool things come to me in my dreams. And I keep a notepad by my bed and a pen, and I would recommend doing that because I think a lot of times when your brain settles down, you can have some reasonable information that comes to you in your thoughts or in your dreams. But this morning I was thinking about something, and it was really that we need to understand where fear comes from. And I was reminded in my dream of a fear that I used to have, and I used to have a terrible fear to flying, absolutely horrible. I don't know if you guys have ever had this, but I probably get on 100 planes per year, easy. Robert, I know you get on even more, probably 200 planes a year. But I used to literally get on planes and have such an anxiety to flying. I would have to go to the bathroom if we hit turbulence, because I did not want other grown men seeing me crying in my seats. And I vividly remember how terrifying it was. I had young children. I used to think, oh my gosh, I'm gonna die if I get on this plane. That's how bad it was. And I have to tell you, fast forward 15, 20 years, I could get on a plane right now and we could be going through the worst turbulence, and my heart doesn't even, my blood pressure doesn't go up, my heart doesn't race anymore. And I want to tell you why that is. And I think it's going to have relevance to our webinar tonight. I remember reaching out to a friend of mine, and this was a guy who flew fighter jets. He went to the US Naval Academy, and eventually became a commercial airline pilot and the captain for American Airlines. And I remember reaching out to him one time and just telling him, Chris, I have this really bad anxiety to flying and this fear of flying. And I remember getting off the phone after what he told me, and he told me a couple of things. He said, Dane, do you ever think that I would get on a plane every single day, as a commercial airline pilot, if I thought planes were unsafe? He said, airline travel is probably the safest form of transportation there is. He also said that, there's 4 engines on most planes. If one engine goes out, you got 3 other engines. And he just continued to feed me information and knowledge that he had that I didn't. And it really helped allay my fears. And I think, guys, we really need to have knowledge and understanding, because with knowledge and understanding, it lowers our anxiety and it gives us knowledge so that we can then take action. So, now when I get on a plane, guys, I don't have that anxiety. And it was literally like a switch flipped. And I'm really hoping that the information that we present tonight is the same for you, especially if you're in a state of fear or anxiety. And why wouldn't you be? A lot of people are out of work. There's a lot of financial uncertainty. I told my wife the other day, I said, if you would have told me in January, I would have a month or two sabbatical to stay at home with my family, to cook a lot more, to go out on a lot more hikes, to get done projects around the house that I haven't really had time to do, I would have told her to sign me up, But now when it's kind of thrust and forced upon us, we're all kind of panicking. And I think there's a real lesson to be learned in this. But I want to get started with the webinar and really be respectful of your time. But I would really recommend, if you have, something to write on, we're going to present a lot of information tonight. And as I always say to my participants, whether I'm speaking at a chiropractic event or whether I'm speaking to my base of patients, the worst thing that can happen from this event is you guys get on this, learn a lot of great information, and then do absolutely nothing with it, because then your life doesn't change. But if you take one or two or three things that we say, and again, I can guarantee you we're going to say some things that either you're not doing or that you need to be doing. And if you write those things down and you think about how can I implement this into my life, I dare say this information could be life-changing and life-saving. So let me start off by welcome our co-host. I have on the line with me Dr. Brian Hester from Anthem, Arizona. He's on the West Coast. I also have Dr. Justin Nye, and he practices right outside of Minnesota in a town called Woodbury. And actually, I have my good friend, Dr. Robert Silverman on. So gentlemen, I want to welcome you to the webinar tonight.
Thanks for having us.
All right, so let's start off by talking about immunity. And Dr. Silverman, this is something that you have a lot of great knowledge on, so I welcome you to jump on. But I'm going to talk about immunity in layman's terms, guys, so that you understand a lot of the people that are on this webinar tonight are lay people. You're not scientists, you're not immunologists, you haven't had a background in immunology like we did in school in chiropractic college. But, the immune system really has three parts, right? It has two parts, really. It has an innate immunity. You have an innate immunity, which is more of a cell-mediated immunity, okay? Meaning that it's mediated by cells like macrophages and white blood cells. And then you have an adaptive immunity, okay? And the adaptive immunity is more what they call humoral immunity. And that's really what we all want to develop. That's more slow. It happens over time, more like 10 to 14 days. And that's where we're developing memory against this virus that will protect us in the future. And that's also the basis, the adaptive immunity is also the basis behind vaccines, okay? So think about this in terms of two militaries, okay? Think about our military. We have certain branches, right? We have the Navy, we have the Army, we have the Marines, and then we also have special forces, right? We have Navy SEALs, and we also have Army Rangers. So I want you to think about your adaptive immunity more like the special forces, okay? And I want you to think about your innate immunity more about the rapid response, more about the your infantrymen and things like that, okay? So immunity is about immunoregulation. How is your immune system regulating the foreign invader, whether that's bacteria or virus? And it's also about what's called mucosal immunity and then your overall genetics. So Dr. Rob, anything you want to add to that?
I thought that was a great overview. Just remember that the key to autoimmunity is the fact that we incur the start of our adaptive immunity, but we're not really worried about autoimmunity now. We're worried about the virus. Interestingly enough, that the problem is that if our natural killer cells aren't working well, we call in more adaptive immunity. And we were talking about this before, not to get too techy, but those dendrite cells, they're in your gut. Those dendrite cells are kind of like the periscope, and they determine if you're going to be an innate or adaptive immunity. So part of the problem is these immunities ultimately will call on helpers, like you referred to the military, we'll call them like extra soldiers, and those extra soldiers are going to be those cytokines, and you're going to get to that, and hence the idea of that cytokine storm. So the key takeaway in this immunity is that we want them to be balanced. We always hope our innate immunity works. We don't want to have to get to our adaptive immunity. And our innate immunity is something that God gave us. Our adaptive immunity is something that man somehow adapted to. So that's where because man has adapted to it, that's where man's faults lie.
So I've been watching a series, guys. I think we all have probably been watching more series on Netflix and Hulu and things like that. But you know, probably because I'm a guy, I love shows about the military. And so I've been watching a show by Ken Burns, who, you know, has created some famous documentaries on World War II. And I'm watching the one on the Vietnam War. I'm almost finished it. And he documents every year of the Vietnam War. And I was thinking about this, Dr. Robin, you can correct me, but I think this is a really good analogy. You know, if you look at the Vietnam War, a lot of times these soldiers were in really foreign places where their lives were being threatened. And then, you know, a soldier would get on his radio and call in reinforcements, like helicopters come in and, you know, bomb the hell out of wherever they were to try to, you know, to kill the Viet Cong to save their lives. And so our military kind of does the same thing. And so I look at our innate immunity kind of like that military, where, you know, we're being threatened. We're being threatened by these viruses that the likes of which we've never seen. We've never seen how they fight. And so, you know, we use these things like the innate immune system to come in as infantry to kill the virus. Now, many times that can lead to a lot of cellular destruction and these cytokines being produced. Cytokines, cyto means cell, kind means kinesis or movement. So cytokines are the chemical messengers that are sent out to bring in reinforcements. And so I think that's a good explanation of how cytokines work and how our innate immune system works. All right, so let's just talk about this, guys. So basically there's 3 levels of defense against bacteria and virus. You have barriers like your mucous membranes, your stomach acid. And I think it's very interesting in this country, Dr. Rob, but we take a lot of antacids. And so people maybe want to think about, you know, the health of their mucous membranes. You know, we talked earlier about using humidifiers, you know, to keep the mucous membranes nice and moist. But I don't think this is a time that you want to mess with your stomach acid, you know, so this is a time that you want all of your exterior barriers to be working. There's a reason that we cough and sneeze, guys. There's a reason for that, and that's to expel foreign materials, foreign invaders like viruses. We also have our innate immunity that we talked about, like our white blood cells. You know, so we have macrophages and neutrophils, and then hopefully, guys, we're all going to develop an acquired immunity where we have memory, so that next time we're exposed to COVID, or when we're exposed to COVID, we can call in the special forces to knock it out before that virus can replicate. Now, this is really interesting, Dr. Rob, and maybe you want to give your take on this, but I'm going to certainly give my take on it. This is really new information that's coming out, but if you look, guys, at this cohort of patients, the patients, or the bar graphs in red, are the people with severe reaction or symptoms to coronavirus. And then the people in blue or blue-green are the ones with non-severe symptoms. And you can see that obviously we have symptoms, guys. Our body goes through symptomatic challenges for a reason. We have fever to kill bacteria and virus. Heat is a catalyst. Heat can disrupt the viral membrane, right? We have cough to expel the virus. We have fatigue because our immune system takes a tremendous amount of energy to run that system in the body, and energy is not created or destroyed, it's just transferred in forms. So if your immune system is working at high level, your foot is floored to the gas pedal as far as your immune system is concerned, you are going to get fatigued, right? But now, and those symptoms are very similar in people with non-severe symptoms and severe symptoms, right? But if you look down at dyspnea, and dyspnea is the medical term for shortness of breath, there's a real difference between the people that are having severe symptoms and the people that aren't. And then if you also look at shortness of breath, there's a real disparity between those two groups. And a lot of the reading that I'm reading now, Dr. Rob, is that this virus affects the hemoglobin of the red blood cell. So it's really affecting the body's ability to absorb oxygen. So we're putting people on ventilators to force oxygen and air into their lungs, but that's not really the problem. The problem is the oxygen can't attach to the red blood cell because the virus is damaging the heme portion of the red blood cell. So it's something interesting, and I think there's probably a lot of information that's being shared on exactly how this virus is creating such catastrophic injury to the lungs and things like that. But Dr. Rob, anything that you want to add to that?
No, I mean, you did a great job of covering everything, and I want to double down on dyspnea, because I just read an article today that said those, I live in New York, so I have all the list of the deaths, and they're doing all this, and they said that the people who died from the ventilators, 80% of them had that dyspnea, shortness of breath. And that's actually the criteria right now, because I have some neighbors that said they have a fever and a cough. And so I told them to call the doctor, and the doctor says, if you don't have shortness of breath, don't bother coming in, and we'll get a hazmat to meet you in your driveway, and we'll do the PCR test.
So
yeah.
I also watched a video from a doctor, I believe out in LA, and he was saying, and this was about a week and a half ago before a lot of this evidence came out, but he was saying that this disease was really mimicking altitude sickness, which would really make sense as why people are hypoxic, because of the fact that they just can't transport oxygen because of the red blood cells just isn't functioning to carry it. Another thing, and Dr. Rob and I, we've talked about this, and to be honest, this is really why we created 8 Weeks to Wellness, because there's so many comorbidities associated with coronavirus. And I was watching, I don't know if you saw it, Dr. Rob, I was watching 60 Minutes this past Sunday, and they had a doctor, they were basically covering the New York hospitals and what's going on and how they're being inundated. And they had a doctor on, they were interviewing her, and she said, it's kind of a misnomer that this is a disease of the elderly, because we're actually seeing a large number of people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s coming in with the disease. And Scott Pelley asked her, he said, do you see any, connection between these people? Is there any similarities? And I'm paraphrasing what he said, but she said, no, we can't put our finger on anything except for many of these people are obese, okay? So I just thought that was interesting. And again, that's just her experience, but she's on the front lines treating this. And again, from the research that I recently read coming out of New York, that 71% of the people that are being admitted to the hospital have one or more chronic conditions, and 78% of the people going into the ICU have 78% of those people have one or more chronic conditions. So, we call that immunocompromised. And again, the opposite of immunocompromised, guys, is being immunostrong, having a strong immune response. And these are really all of the diseases, the chronic diseases that make you more likely to be immunocompromised. So cardiovascular disease, diabetes, obesity, hypertension, obviously age, our immune system does get weaker as we get older, but pulmonary disease, liver disease, kidney disease, right? Having radiation therapy, or if you've been on chemotherapy or you're taking biologics that suppress the immune system. So it's just something to consider, guys. And I really see this personally as a wake-up call. And I really hope we as Americans see this as the wake-up call it's meant to be, because there's a law of cause and effect here. And there's always a law of cause and effect. And we seem to be focusing on the effect side, on the strength of the virus, instead of the cause side, which is the strength of the host. For the majority of us, guys, we are not, if we get COVID, we are not going to get a severe reaction. We're not going to die. Are there people dying of this virus? Yes, there is. Okay? And I think our heart goes out to these people and their families, guys. And I think we all need to be praying for these people. But, the fact is that many of these people were immunocompromised before they were subjected to the virus. So I think the key takeaway here, Dr. Robert, is that if you are immunocompromised, now's the time, if you're spending a month or two in your home, to realize, what can I do to deal with my chronic disease?
My allergies are raging. I do not have COVID-19. I came back negative. I'm trying to get the antibodies now. Find out. So excuse me for all that. Dana, I actually have some numbers here. And for hospitalization in the US, 43% of the people that came in were over 65 years of age. 31% were from 50 to 64, and 25% were from 18 to 49. Interesting, 18 to 49, the most common comorbidity, obesity. 50 to 64, obesity. Over 65, it was hypertension. So it's about 50% hypertension total is the leading cause of comorbidity, and 48.3% for obesity.
This was feeds right into what you're talking about, but this was an article that you gave me. And I pulled this right out of the article, Dr. Robert, but it says, interesting, a high body mass index score appears to be related to a poor prognosis in comorbid patients with COVID-19, which further points to a possible role of sarcopenic obesity in influencing outcome. So sarcopenic obesity, guys, means that, there's obviously BMI, anything over 25 is considered overweight. BMI is body mass index, just a calculation of height and weight. So you can get a BMI calculator, go online and figure out your BMI. But if you're over 25, you're overweight. If you're over 30, you're obese. And if you're over 40, you're morbidly obese. But sarcopenic BMI does not take into account muscle mass. And it's something that we talk about all the time with 8 Weeks to Wellness. But you don't want to lose weight. You want to lose fat. Okay, and particularly visceral fat, which tends to be pro-inflammatory. Now, Dr. Robert, is there any science on high visceral fat levels interfering with our immune system?
There was just something that came out about interesting visceral fat and a direct correlation between visceral fat and cognition because of inflammation, but it didn't talk about immune system. But what we're seeing with this very interesting virus, a lot of people losing their sense of smell and their sense of taste. As a matter of fact, one of my patients said that it still hasn't come back. And that's a direct attack to the central nervous system, which of course in the medical model is kind of being overlooked. So to answer your question directly and not give food for thought, to answer your question is there's no direct inflammatory report that I've seen, but we all know that visceral fat innervates the specific organs, and a lot of these organs are targets for comorbidities.
And doesn't visceral fat produce inflammatory cytokines already? So it would stand to reason, Dr. Rob, that if people have a lot of visceral fat pumping out these inflammatory cytokines, and now they're subjected to this COVID virus and they're producing even more inflammatory cytokines, there's going to be a lot more cellular death.
And, you're speaking to the actual problem with the cytokine storm. It's a double down. So a certain amount of cytokines are used to help us. The problem is these comorbidity patients, these obese patients are elevated in inflammation. So with their elevation of inflammation, with more cytokines coming in, it's like the water in a glass just spilling all over the table. It's a storm, if you will. More so than that, their immune system isn't functioning because they're sick and on fire. So even more cytokines are coming in. So it's like a triple threat. And that's part of the problem. So you're seeing people react differently into the symptomology. It's really because their immune system is in a different state. And again, people don't know. They think they're fit. They think they're healthy until they get it and they find out, wow, I'm not. Chris Cuomo is an example I use all the time. 49-year-old, pretty fit guy. He's a CNN reporter. Yet he didn't tell anybody that he has a naturally decreased, what we call IgM antibody. He didn't tell anybody that would be a comorbidity, but looking at him, his BMI is good, his body fat is good, he has access, yet he's having, as he called it, a beast of a time with the monster.
So, the cytokine storm, guys, the way I see it, I was out for a walk the other day and we had a really big downpour. This was yesterday. So, this was Tuesday night. We had a really big downpour. I went out for a nice long hike and everything was clean. The rain washed away everything. The streets were clean. It just cleaned away everything. So that's a good thing. So a cytokine storm, if it's kept in check, is going to be very healing in nature. But if you have a storm that's a Category 5 hurricane, it's going to create mass destruction. And that's when we're seeing, a lot of the death as far as the organs shutting down and the lungs shutting down. There's just too much damage and the body can't adapt to that. So let's talk about, guys, our immune system resilience. So what is the diet we should be following? And guys, to be quite honest, this is the diet not just for the immune system. It's the diet you should be following. It's really what we teach with the 8 Weeks to Wellness. It's really what's going to decrease your visceral fat. It's what's going to give you the nutrients and antioxidants that you need to support a healthy immune system, okay? So just to go through this, and Dr. Robert, this is a lot of the things that you teach as well, but we talk about smash fish, wild smash fish, which is salmon, mackerel, anchovies, sardines, and herring, right? All of those fish are high in nutrients, high in omega-3s, which are very anti-inflammatory. Eating a plant-based diet, eating plants, guys. Plants are loaded with fiber. They're loaded with nutrients. Fruits and vegetables, especially colored, high-colored. I love purple cabbage, right? I love blueberries. So the deeper the color, the more carotenoids and the more antioxidants in those fruits and vegetables. Grass-fed meats, right? I love grass-fed meats, guys. You can find grass-fed butchers in your area. We use one. We get our grass-fed sausage and our grass-fed meat and our grass-fed or free-range chicken there. You want high fiber. Why? High fiber minimizes the impact of insulin. Okay, insulin makes you fat. Okay, let me say this again. Insulin is fat fertilizer. Okay, insulin is what you secrete when you eat a high refined carbohydrate. Insulin takes sugar, shuttles it into the cell. Your body can't store large amounts of sugar, teeny amount in the liver and the muscle. So that sugar has to be converted to what? Fat. We are not fat in this country because we eat too much fat. We are fat in this country because we eat too many high insulin producing carbohydrates that are not natural. Show me a bread tree. Show me where Cheerios grow, okay? None of these things are natural. They don't come from, they come in plants. They're made in factories and plants, but they're not made from plants. They're made from refined grains, okay? Nuts and seeds, again, great sources of nutrients and fats, guys. Chicken soup, obviously grandma had something right when she said you need to take your chicken soup for the flu. Herbals like ginger and turmeric. Bone broth, guys. My wife and I just made a big thing of bone broth. It's absolutely delicious. All the marrow in the bone, guys, cooks out when you make bone broth. So you get all that healthy fat and nutrients from the marrow. And there's plenty of great recipes for bone broth, guys. I would really, really encourage you, especially if you have a slow cooker or an Instapot, to be making bone broth right now. Really good for the immune system. And mushrooms and organic coffee. And Dr. Rob, anything that you want to say about the nutrient list? Anything that we missed?
No, you got it. You know, something that you may want to add now, came across actually yesterday, is quercetin. So it's a natural antiviral, it's an antimicrobial and an antihistamine. So quercetin now in the herbs, you can buy those, have shown to be very, very potent. Believe it or not, Maymay found it. Maymay is my wife. She found a particular honey. It's the expensive honey. I should have known. She rang the credit card. That has immune boosting, just brand new immune boosting properties.
So let's talk about some, and quercetin is high in what foods, Dr. Rob?
Actually, the herb, you can just go in and get it.
Okay. Awesome.
You know, quercetin's not that available in the foods.
So guys, just some other things, and then I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Justin and Dr. Brian. But, you know, some other things, consider time restrictive eating. We call it intermittent fasting. It's really time restrictive eating. So you're restricting your eating into a window of 8 hours or 10 hours, and you're fasting for 12 to 16 hours. There's a term called autophagy. Autophagy is when your body cleans up cellular debris. And again, I think it's really good to give your digestive system a break. Remember, the two systems that require the most energy in the body, digestive system, immune system. So it stands to reason, right? If we're giving our digestive system a break, we have more energy in the body to focus on our immune system. So autophagy is really important, intermittent fasting. Getting sleep, I pulled this right out of a study, guys, but prolonged sleep deprivation and the accompanying stress response invokes a persistent, unspecific production of pro-inflammatory cytokines. So there you go, guys. There's that word again. Pro-inflammatory cytokines go up when you're sleep deprived, okay? So you don't want to be neglecting your sleep. We all have plenty of time. We're probably not working overtime. So 7-8 hours of good sleep. The older I've got, the more I absolutely love my sleep. Anybody who knows me knows that how much I love my sleep. But I just think it's so important for so many systems in the body, cortisol regulation, and I could go on and on. But you need to get into a healthy sleep rhythm, okay? Home exercise plan, guys, recognize that we'll talk about this, but we've been doing, I did it today with Dawn. We've been doing daily virtual workouts that we've been posting to our 8 Weeks Wellness Facebook page, you know, mobility workouts, strength workouts. You know, I see a lot of people, because you can't go to your gyms and you can't get out of your house, doesn't mean that you shouldn't be exercising, okay? Again, you know, to me, a strong immune system is one in which that, you know, you have a good, like we talked about, you have a good muscle to body fat ratio. And so you don't want to be that sarcopenic obese person. Maybe your BMI isn't bad, but if your body fat is high and your muscle mass is low, okay, you still may have a lot of visceral fat. And that visceral fat is producing those inflammatory cytokines. We talked about humidity as well. Some of the immune, and Dr. Robert and I, we talked about this a lot, so we're not going to go into depth on this, but some of the immune boosting supplements, you know, zinc citrate, mixed mushroom complex, vitamin D3 with K2 probiotics, beta glucans, omega-3s, elderberry. But Dr. Rob, in a nutshell, from my reading, if I had to pick 2 or 3 supplements, I would absolutely be taking vitamin D3 right now. I'd be taking vitamin C. I would be taking omega-3s right now, and I'd be taking a really good spore-based probiotic.
Absolutely. The vitamin C now, we were just talking about this before, in the New York hospitals, they're using intravenous vitamin C to help get around all the respiratory issues. So there you go. Sorry about that. Wasn't trying to steal your thunder. They're actually giving them vitamin C. Some are giving ozone, and they're giving actually an oral D. So for me, if I were to take an IV, I believe in the pill, but if you could get to the IV, it would be the C, the D, and the glutathione. But that protocol is profound and quite robust in what's needed.
So there you go, guys.
You got to get them. You got to get them.
1,500 milligrams 3 times a day would be 4,500 milligrams. So
Right.
You can take that in 1,000. What I've been doing, Dr. Rob, is I have 500 milligram chewable wafers, and I've been just popping one every 2 hours and chewing it up.
Absolutely. Great for the immune system.
So we talked about probiotics, guys. We talked about vitamin D3. Vitamin D3 is a lot of research on especially respiratory infections and its impact, particularly on the immune system when it comes to respiratory, viral, and bacterial infections. All right, so now we talked about the cytokine storm. I think we covered that already. Let's talk about turmeric. Dr. Rob, it's one of the things you've educated us on. I love turmeric. I actually love fresh turmeric. I love to put them in my smoothies and blend them up. But what is about turmeric that makes it such a potent cytokine blocker?
Well, it actually blocks what we call the NF-kappa B, and that is the precursor to the release of all these cytokines, which become interleukins. So it stops it, what we call upstream, versus stopping it, if you will, downstream. It's fascinating. So it blocks cytokine releases by blocking NF-kappa B. It also is shown to increase what we call the NRF2 pathway, which is our key antioxidant pathway in phase 2 of the liver. So we've heard so much, and I'm not trying to get too technical, of the cytokine storm releasing the NLRP3 inflammasome. The way to modulate that inflammasome is to upregulate the NRF2. And the key now, the bad guy, the sheriff of the bad guy, is interleukin 6, which is in your slide. Interleukin 6 may be the key to the cytokine storm. Curcumin actually downregulates the release of interleukin 6, so it's great for the cytokine storm.
So guys, go out and get your curcumin, start using it in your cooking. If you don't like it in your cooking, go out and get curcumin as a supplement, okay? So now let's get into what we really want to cover tonight, guys. Now that you got a little bit of a lesson on virology and immunology and what you should be doing. Now we want to talk about sheltering in place. And I've been seeing, I remember going to the grocery store, and I posted this on Facebook, but I remember going to the grocery store and seeing the shelves. The ice cream was absolutely ransacked. It seems like toilet paper and ice cream right now are in really high demand, and you can't get them. And also the booze. The particular grocery store I was in sold wine, and all the wine was gone except for a couple rogue bottles of Chardonnay, which just goes to show you that most people don't drink Chardonnay. But anyway, guys, it just made me think that, what are we doing at home? Drinking booze, eating a lot of ice cream, eating a lot of processed food. So, it gave me the idea that we really need to start sheltering healthfully in place. And there's things that you can do, guys, to shelter healthfully in place. And we want to go over that with you. So I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Justin and Dr. Brian, and we're going to go through the rules. And I think that all three of us will kind of add our comments and feedback. But, the first one is change your perception. And, I talked about this already, guys, but I've really seen this as the sabbatical, 28 years of practice, 51 years on this earth. I've never had a break from work. I went right from college into working, and I've never stopped working for more than a week or two. And I have to tell you, I look at this as kind of a blessing. I've spent so much quality time with my boys. My older son is home from Philly. He's sheltering in place in the home. We've had so many meals together. My wife made a beautiful meal to get that just now we're going to have when we're done. And we're taking hikes together. I went for a bike ride with my son the other day. It's been a real blessing. So I'll let you guys go ahead and take over.
So one of the things I want to do right now, because I hope everybody's got notes and you're going to start to write things down. I know there's a ton of information of the things we already went through with supplements and understanding what it is that's going on. knowledge is power. And when we know what's going on, when we know wrapping around this whole COVID thing and all the components of it, if we can understand it, I believe we become much more able to beat it, right? The brain, the power, the immune system, and all those things. But what I want everyone to do right now is take a minute. And as you're looking at your notes, I want you to close your eyes. And, I touched base with this with Dane. And what I want you to do is I want you to go back to say mid-January. We just finished the holidays in 2019. We're now on to 2020. We had New Year's. We did New Year's Eve. We did all those things that we do every season, that we spend time with family. We traditionally have a lot to eat. We have a lot to drink. We love on life, and there's nothing wrong with that. But now we're into January, and life hasn't seemed to slow down. If you're like me, you got kids that are in sports. You're running back and forth to work. Every weekend seems to be tied up into something. And your life just keeps going and going and going. And in a moment, I'm sure if you're like me at all, in a moment you said to yourself, I just wish life would slow down. If I could just have like one day to get 10 things done, if I could just have an extra hour in every single day to get a little bit more done, I feel like maybe I could catch up. Now open your eyes. And the reality is we are in those moments now. And although if you're like me at the beginning, and Brian and Dana, I don't know about you guys, but at the beginning, it was hard for me to shut down and to realize that I had to slow down. And I felt like it was more of a curse and more of like this burden of things I was trying to get done, that I had goals. And I listened to a podcast today where it talked about setting goals and having a vision. And since day one of my life, we've been running on a treadmill, whether we were a kid running on a treadmill, trying to, to accomplish more in preschool and in kindergarten. And then we hit middle school and high school. We're trying to get into the best colleges. And if you were like me, you're doing sports and you were trying to be the best athlete and you were working out and you're doing all these things. And this life had a treadmill, and the treadmill was going and going and going. And now we stand here now and the treadmill stopped. And instead of reality is looking around and saying what's going on around us, we're trying to fix the treadmill. We're trying to make that thing work again. We're trying to change the buttons. We're trying to speed it up, because we need that treadmill to go back on. And I think it's all about perspective. What things back in January were you trying to get done that you couldn't? What things in your life were falling apart? Maybe you needed to date your spouse more. Maybe you need to spend more time with your kids. Maybe you needed to spend more time on yourself. Maybe you've always said, hey, I wanted to exercise. I wanted to lose weight. I wanted to do all these things that I've never had time for. Now we want you to flip your perspective. And the perspective is you have time. You had time before, but now you really have time. And you just got to create that time. And you got to start to look at life differently, because now you have the opportunity. God's given you the opportunity to look at life differently now than you ever have. And I hope that perspective will create some different habits for you that will last a lifetime from this moment forward.
I think, as Americans, particularly when you travel to other countries, Justin, you see that they take life a lot slower. And their treadmill is a lot slower. Our treadmill is going at like 9 miles an hour. Theirs is generally going about 4 miles an hour. And I think 9 miles an hour has become the new norm. And as we always say in 8 Weeks to Wellness, I love the Stephen Covey quote, but things that matter most should never be at the mercy of things that matter least. And so now we have the opportunity to really take inventory on what matters most. And if I asked you, what would you lay down your life for? What matters most? We're all going to say the same things. We're going to say the same things. It's our spouse, right? It's our children. It's our relationship with God. Hopefully it's our health, right? It's service of others, right? And I was thinking too, that we should all be thinking and praying for our healthcare workers. I mean, these are people that are heroes that are out there serving, right? Putting themselves in harm's way. My wife was on a Zoom call with her friend who's a local ICU nurse. And these are heroes, right? So I think a really good thing to do, Dr. Justin, is to reach out to somebody that that may be a doctor or a nurse and find out what they need. You have some time on your hands? Well, guess what? Go and help somebody who probably needs some help, and that's probably a healthcare worker, and it may be just going and picking up some groceries for them,
Right. It could be simple as just sending a message, right? I mean, send a text, give them a call when you have that extra time. Call somebody you haven't talked for a while. I guarantee relationships you've had in the past, if you let go, you can really rekindle in an opportunity like this, for sure.
So Dr. Brian, I think you're going over developing a routine.
Yeah, when we talk about developing a routine, part of this we really want to stress is it's really about making healthcare deposits. And the whole purpose of this is, there's a lot of people that for the last week, or 2 weeks, they've been just sitting back, they've been kicking it on the couch and getting caught up on Netflix and binge watching their shows and maybe day drinking and doing a lot of things that are serving them in the short term, but they're going to take them further away from their goals. And so when we talk about developing a routine, I think it's really, really important. If I ask you a month ago what time you were at work on Mondays, most people could tell me without a doubt it's this time. And we get up at a certain amount of time, we get our kids off to school, we do those things. And we had this routine. And so now everything's just kind of been spun on its axis and people are so out of sorts. So the challenge in this is really scheduling out and scripting things. And when I say scripting things, I don't mean everything, but I mean the things that matter. All right. So if you don't have a date night scheduled into your calendar with your spouse, then the chances of it happening every single week are not that great. If you don't have your workouts scheduled every single week, then chances are they're not going to happen. Dr. Justin talked about being on this hamster wheel. And one thing that we've really tasked, our patients and our members of our practice to do is look, if you were in a routine of working out at 5:30 in the morning, at 6:30 in the morning, let's try to keep you in that routine and establish new health patterns that where we can provide those workouts in a virtual format for the time being. But let's stay in the groove and let's keep that as a part of your regular schedule, because then it's going to be easier for you to stay engaged. Now, one thing we talk about too is how we nourish our bodies. And if you're not putting time into your schedule to grocery shop for something other than toilet paper, all right, if you're not putting time into your schedule to do meal prep, it's not going to happen. And if you don't like cooking, great. There's tons of services that you can use that will mail things to your house. But the most important thing, when we go back to talking about the nutrition, nothing out of a box, a bag, or a window. We want to focus on one ingredient foods. We want to focus on things that nourish our bodies. And one thing that stuck with me, Dane, that one of the first times I heard you speak was, I vividly remember this. You said, look, if you wouldn't put it in your dog dish, you shouldn't put it in your body. And so if you're not scheduling your nutrition, then again, you're just happening along the way and you're going to grab things that are convenient, but they aren't really nourishing. And then when you think about all the other aspects of your life before COVID-19 and before you had a couple of weeks to press pause, even though we were forced to, we had goals. We had goals with our job. We had goals with our retirement. We had goals with our kids to make good grades. We had real life goals that mattered to us. But what we find is that most people, they don't have any healthcare goals. And one thing we want to talk to our patients about and our community about is you can never hit a target that you're not aiming at. And we would much rather aim high and miss than aim low and hit. And so we realize that done is better than perfect. Nobody expects us to be perfect. And we might even drink some Chardonnay every now and again, even if we don't like it, because that's what's available. But right, we want to make these healthcare deposits. And so, rule number 2, developing a routine, you've got to put things that matter. Like you said, we never want to put the things that matter most at the mercy of the things that matter least. And if you're not scheduling it out, we have the same 168 hours in a week. If you're not scheduling out and being routineful, meaning being consistent, then the likelihood of those things happening are not very good.
As I like to say, Dr. Brian, show me your calendar and I'll show you your life,
Yep.
So there's
sure.
only 168 hours in a week, guys. We always talk about this with 8 weeks to wellness, but the average human being is awake 110 to 120 hours if you're getting a reasonable amount of sleep. And so it all comes down to what you're going to do with that. And, the most important resource that you will ever have in your life is your emotional, physical, and spiritual health, because that is going to determine every other thing that you think is important. When you're spiritually healthy, you're a better human being. You're a better mom, you're a better dad, you're a better coworker. When you're physically healthy, you're a better mom, you're a better dad, you're a better coworker, you're a better grandmom or grandson, right? So spend time on the things that matter most, but schedule it. And it really comes down to 4 things that we teach in 8 Weeks to Wellness. How are you eating? How are you moving? How are you thinking? And how are you sleeping? Make sure you're eating good food. Make sure you're making time for exercise or getting out on a hike. Okay. Make sure you're getting good rest every night, and make sure you're thinking and managing your thought life. And we're going to talk about that in here in a couple more slides. But Justin, you're going to talk a little bit about keeping organized.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
you and Christy and Desiree and Brian are probably four of the most organized people I've ever met.
well, I think I know in life, especially, if you look back to January, organization was the only thing that kept us going, right? I mean, we organized our personal lives, our business lives, our kids' lives, our social lives, our relationship lives. All of that went into a calendar. And I think a lot of people in today's world, whether it's a Google Calendar or Outlook or wherever you put it, we link all these different calendars together so that we can hit all the different organizational pieces that we need. But it really comes down to organization. And I don't know about you two guys, but I love lists. I don't remember a lot, no matter how many fish oils I take. I seem to forget, right? And it's always at the worst time that I remember. So I've created lists. And the best way for me to do that has been through an app on my phone. So I use my notes on my phone. And just like a calendar, Christy and I share lists where it's what do we need at the grocery store? What are the things we need to get done around the house, both inside and outside? What are the things we want to accomplish with the kids this week? In fact, Christy even made an organized calendar for the kids now that they're at home, and she's this new homeschool teacher. She's now has an organization. What are the kids doing at 9 o'clock in the morning? What are they doing at 10? What are they doing at 11? Because organization allows them to get accomplished what they want to get accomplished so they can enjoy the things that they want to do. And it's the same thing for us. If we create list and organization and we start with the worst things, right? It was a book called Eat That Frog. And basically what it talked about was pick the one thing that you like the least on your list, the one thing that you despise, you don't want to do. Start with that. If you do that first, everything else on the list of things to do that day will seem easy because you've accomplished the hardest task first. So don't pick the easy ones, the ones you really like to do. Pick the worst. Pick the one that's the hardest and then work from there. But if you don't create lists, you're not going to get things accomplished. You're going to be very scattered. You're going to be going from one thing to the next. And you're going to get to the end of the day. You're going to be like, I got nothing accomplished, right? Because I did a little bit of a lot of things and not one thing of all of it, right? Completing a task to 100%. So just making sure when you get organized, when you create lists, you know where they always are. You're always adding and subtracting from them. And it should feel really good. If you're like me, it feels really good to make that check, or to delete it, or to push the button on my phone that says it's completed. But you got to make sure you're creating them. You got to create some organization in your life, especially now. Now's the opportunity to develop habits that, again, will last a lifetime. And organization is a great habit to create now when you don't have as many things outside of your home, because we spend so much time in our home, that can allow you to be more organized once we're back out into the world and back to some sort of normalcy.
I think that's awesome, Justin. I think it's good to create that with your spouse if you have the opportunity. I get up nice and early. I get up at 5 a.m. every day, and I love I call it my hour of power between 5 and 6 a.m. Nobody in my house is up, not even the dog. And it's the time I meditate. It's the time I pray, but it's also the time I think about my day and what I want to get accomplished, and to write down those things of what do I want to get accomplished, so that's great advice.
And I think Sundays is a great day for that. I don't know about you guys, but like Christy and I, usually in the evenings on Sunday, we say, okay, what do we have going on this week? What do we need to accomplish as a team and in our relationship, in our kids and work? And what are the things we need to work together so that we're benefiting each other in this relationship? So the people that are on your team of your life, whether you're married, whether you're not, there are people that you have relationships that are on your team of life. And you just need to check in with them and make sure that they're on the same organization wing that you are.
So rule number 4, Dr. Brian, but this is huge because we talk about this all the time in 8 Weeks to Wellness, but start. This is such a great opportunity. And again, I don't think this happened by accident, but I think God shut down the fast food restaurants. I think that's part of this whole coronavirus. God just wanted to shut down McDonald's and Burger King.
They're still going in the drive-through though. So, but no, this is, when I was a kid, I grew up in the South, and I can remember, every single night, one of my favorite parts of the day was sitting down to dinner, sitting at the dinner table with my family, and, and having a dinner that my mom made, and it was real food. And, when we go through this, and we've gotten away from that as a society. And so now it's time to really rekindle that and reconnect with that. And, you know, we did a gratitude share, and we talk about things that we're thankful for, what we're doing well, and what do we need help with. And when you talk about eat real food, you know, I touched on this, eat single ingredient foods. If I ask you the ingredient of an egg, you're going to tell me that it's an egg. We can get into the basic macros of it, but you're not going to tell me it's an egg McMuffin because, you know, it's a real food. You want to eat more good fat. You know, we could spend a whole hour just talking about why fat is good for you and it's not the enemy. But you talked about know your sources and buying local. Number 4, rethink your sweeteners. People do not understand when you eat foods that are sugar-free, fat-free, artificial sweeteners kill your gut flora, makes your digestive tract even worse, and 90% of your immune system is in your GI. And when you're doing that, you're putting yourself at more susceptibleness to viruses. All right. So you got to understand what you're putting in your body. We've got the opportunity to nourish our bodies or break our bodies down. Find a superfood you love. You know, I like coconut milk unsweetened. I consider it a superfood. I also like, you know, cocoa nibs. I love, you know, all different types of sprouted foods. And when you talk about superfoods like turmeric and all these different things, you know, it's going to help add up your defense when you're adding antioxidants to your immune system. Kiss refined foods goodbye. We talked about that. We don't want things out of a box, a bag, or a window. But the one thing I will tell you, and I want to use this as an example because I want you to think about this. Dr. Dane, what's the fruit that you like?
A fruit that I like, blueberries.
Have you ever eaten 10 pounds of blueberries at once?
Never.
Never, because your body knows based on past experience, I can eat a cup of blueberries. I can get a lot of nutrition in a little bit of volume, and I'm going to be satisfied for an hour and a half to 2 hours. But anytime you've sat down with a bag of chips, a bag of cookies, a bag of crackers, you can eat and eat and eat because your body knows based on past experience, I need a lot of volume to get a little bit of nutrition out of there. And that's why the tendency is to overeat when you eat crap food. People think that it's expensive to eat healthy, but when you eat healthy, you actually eat less. And that's the thing that you have to take into consideration. So you want to get away from refined foods and we want to eat real foods. Sprouted grains, we talked about sauerkraut, you know, different types of things are really, really good for our guts and really healthy. That's a separate nutrition talk. But eating raw at every meal, think about this. And I always ask my patients this. We're the only animal that cooks our food. Every other animal eats their food raw. And when you raise food above 110 degrees, you're destroying a lot of the natural digestive enzymes and you're making that food harder to actually consume. And so we want to have a good mix of raw food in our diet. And we don't have to be sushi, although I love sushi, but I like sashimi. I don't like rice. My body doesn't digest it well. And when we talk about this, we've got to find new sources and we have to make a plan. This is what I'm adamant about. Don't eat things that you don't like. I don't like radishes. I don't like fennel or black licorice. I don't like any kind of olive. And I don't like beets, whether they're golden, whether they're red, whether they're baked, fried, I don't care. So I can eat them without throwing up, but I don't like those things. So there's a whole host of other nutrient-dense foods that I can eat, that I can enjoy, but it all goes back to planning, prepping, and having intent with what you're going to put into your body.
Now I know why you don't drink martinis.
That would be true.
All right, so let's move on to the next, guys. We're getting through this pretty good, but rule number 5, stay mentally engaged. I think this is pretty easy, Dr. Justin, right? Like it's a great time to pick up something that's going to stimulate your brain. Your brain is just like a muscle, right?
Right. I mean, it's like podcasts right now. I mean, you can't not find a podcast that you're going to like, that's going to stimulate your thinking process. It's going to cause you to think different. And, you know, if it's in your quiet time or it's in your exercise or during your cooking time, you know, find something that stimulates your brain. You know, to stimulate our brain around here, Christy bought this coloring page that's the size of our 6 by 6 foot table. And we've all taken turns trying to color this thing, and we don't even have half of it done, but it stimulates your brain and your creativity again. And I couldn't tell you the last time I colored and I thought of colors and spent that time with my kids. I mean, so both spending time and creating creativity, I know has been a great thing. Dane, I think you said you were doing a puzzle at one point.
Yeah, we have a big puzzle on our dining room table that I don't know how many pieces, but there's a lot, but we're hacking away at it, you know? So I love this too, Dr. Justin, you know, is something like learning a new language. You know, if you've always wanted to take up guitar, You know, it teaches you something new. It's challenging. It's a skill that you can build on. In other words, you get better and better and better. And like Dr. Brian said in the last one, it's rewarding. You know, don't work on a puzzle if you don't like puzzle. But, you know, if you've always thought about learning a new language like French or Spanish, now is a perfect opportunity, guys, to challenge your brain and pick up a new language.
And you can guarantee we all have a dozen books that somebody told us to read. And if you're like me, you've bought half of them and they're sitting on a shelf. So why not start reading books? Take some time to finish a book. That's my problem.
Absolutely. I mean, if we can spend a lot of hours, you know, on Facebook and on Netflix, we certainly can pick up a great novel for an hour, right? Meditation, is that your book there, Brian?
This is a great book that Heather gave me called Run the Mile You're In. So if you haven't read that, really, really awesome book. But rule number 6, when we talk about meditate, when we do 8 weeks to wellness, this is probably the single hardest thing that I find that it is to get patients to do. And here's why. Dr. Justin talked about that hamster wheel and us having, you know, we're running kids from sporting event to sporting event, and we're grabbing things on the go, and we're trying to juggle our job and all these other things. But to get people to slow down 10 minutes a day, just 10 minutes a day to meditate. And when we talk about meditation, this is quiet, idle time where your kids aren't bugging you, you're on your phone, you're not trying to read. This is just you being in a relaxed position, allowing you to process your thoughts and just being idle. Now, the thing about meditation is when we are stressed, stress levels cause our cortisol levels to rise. And when our cortisol level rise, we increase our cytokine production. And so the thing about meditation is it calms all of those things down. It decreases your blood pressure. It allows you to sleep better. And so if you're not taking 10 minutes out of your day, whether it's in the morning at the 4:30, 5 o'clock time, like Dane said, or whether it's in the evening after you've put your kids to bed, try it. You will be profoundly impressed with just how relaxed you get because you're finally even just taking just 10 minutes for you.
So one of the things I love about meditation, I really feel like meditation has changed my life in a very profound way. And if you would have told me 20 years ago I would meditate on a regular basis, I probably would have laughed in your face because I wasn't that person. But I do 10 minutes of meditation every day and sometimes longer. But what it gives me the opportunity, guys, is just to take inventory on my thoughts. There's some days when I have a really hard time quieting my mind and thoughts just keep flooding in, you know, and there's other days where, you know, I'm doing my meditation, I can go the whole 10 minutes and then probably another 10 minutes and there's not, you know, many worrisome or anxiety producing thoughts come into my mind. But it always gives me the chance to pause and say, okay, this is a day where I seem to have a lot of anxiety. This is a day where I have a lot of thoughts that are flooding my mind. And so I really need to double down on the meditation, right? And to not let that accumulate. So that anxiety builds and builds and builds and builds and builds. And again, you know, it's, if you're a depressed person, there's obviously a chemical imbalance, but a lot of that is because you think depressing thoughts, okay? If you're an angry person, it's because you think angry thoughts, and those angry thoughts accumulate and accumulate and accumulate until you have the personality of an angry person. So when is the time to stop? The time to stop is when you stop thinking in the way that an angry or depressed person thinks, and you start thinking in the way that a loving person thinks. And you can't do that if you're not taking inventory on what you're thinking about. And most of the time, we're being thought through. We're not actively thinking. We're letting the world shape our thoughts and our feelings and our emotions. And we're not truly guiding what we really want to think, which I think all of us want to think success and love and joy and gratitude. We don't want to think anger and bitterness and hate. Those to me are just effects of our society. But I think through our mind and our mental clarity and through meditation, we can really change that by taking control of the very liberty that we have, which is our thoughts. Exercise, guys, I think we covered this, pretty well, but just get off your butts, guys. In 8 Weeks to Wellness, we talk about the golden circle. The golden circle is 3 20-minute sessions. So in an hour session of exercise, you want to try to hit 20 minutes of cardio, right? Get out and walk, throw a backpack on, get on your treadmill, just get that heart rate up and down. Mobility and posture prep. I did a great workout with Dawn today. It was all core and posture exercises. And then finally, strength training, #1 biomarker of aging, guys. Keep saying it. Okay, I'm hoping people finally listen to me. #1 biomarker of aging is loss of muscle mass. Okay, you show me an old, feeble person, and I'll show you a person that doesn't have a lot of muscle mass. You show me an old, strong, fit, mobile person, and I'll show you an older person that has a lot of muscle mass. We spend so much time focusing on diet, and I think it's really important, but we should be focusing on something that's really as important, and that's keeping muscle on your body. So guys, anything you want to add to that?
No, I don't think it's really changed, Dane. I mean, we've been talking about exercise, and everybody knows they're supposed to exercise. And then I think it goes back to that, going back to your calendar, and Brian talked about it, is that you got to set the time, you got to set the tone, and now you have the time and you have the opportunity to set the tone of your life. And if this is something you've been missing, and every time somebody asks you what are health goals you have, and your top 3, this is in one of your top 3 every single time, this is the time. And this type of a system where you have some cardio, you have some strength, and you have some mobility, it's awesome because it's always changing and it never gets boring. And so if you just like running, well, great, there isn't running in this. It's called cardio. If you want more muscle, great, the more muscle. So if you're on Facebook Live and you're down below, type in down below and say, I'm in. And on Saturday morning, join us for one of our workouts. We're doing them virtual right now with Dawn, and they're fantastic. They don't take a lot of time. They're easy to do in the sense of we modify them for wherever you're at. We're going to meet you where you're at because we're not all in the same place when it comes to exercise, and that's okay. The most important thing is just start moving, like Dane talked about. Let's get moving.
Guys, you have to jump on these because I've been doing them with Dawn, and Dawn is amazing. But she's a certified personal trainer. She has so much experience. But go to our HWW site, go down to our calendar, click on one of the workouts. Like if you want to do tomorrow's, just click on it, RSVP, and it's a Zoom call. I set my laptop on my stool, and I just get at it. I just do what she tells me to do. It's awesome, right? So these are live workouts that we're doing at 2 p.m. Eastern, right? So pick your time zone, but it's 2 p.m. Eastern. And we're also thinking about adding other classes as well, okay? We're almost at the end here, guys. We talked about this, right? Know the rules, follow the rules. And I think depending on where you are, we're in Pennsylvania, where my wife and I live and with our kids. And, it's a hot spot, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York. So I think, but it just makes sense to follow the rules, guys. And don't touch your face. If you're leaving the home, I think it's a smart idea to start wearing a mask, just follow, keep things sanitized. I think we all have heard the rules, 10 times over. We already talked about this, guys, pretty much at length, but, that's something you want to add to your repertoire. For me, I have a 7-day pill box. I don't use them for pills and medications. I use them for my supplements. So I load up my supplement tray for 7 days, and then it just makes it super easy every day to take my supplements. And the last one, guys, we'll finish up with this. But, I think rule number 10 is really important. I think it's time to start developing an inside-out, bottom-up approach. And I love this graphic, guys. But when you think of top-down, like I'm going to control you and tell you what to do, okay? And again, I think of a communist country. Like, you're not smart enough to think, so we're going to tell you what to do. But the reason I think that we live in one of the most awesome countries in the world is that we have liberties. We have liberties, and one of our liberties is to think and have common sense, okay? If you've ever studied the American Revolution like I have, there was a very famous gentleman that wrote a book. His name is Thomas Paine, and it really started to get people to think about, do we want to be subjugated to the British forever, right? And his name was Thomas Paine. He wrote a small book called Common Sense. It's common sense to start thinking, guys. It's common sense to start taking care of your immune system, okay? It's common sense to start exercising and getting more sleep. It's common sense, guys, that this virus isn't the boogeyman and isn't going to kill you if your immune system is strong. So start having instead of a bottom down, start having, instead of a top down, start thinking for yourself and having a bottom up approach. And if you look here, bottom up is about cooperation. It's about us. Why are we doing this webinar? Because we want to share information that we've learned over our lifetimes. We care about our patients. We care about our families. We care about you. I can guarantee you that Dr. Justin and Dr. Brian, we're not running scared of this virus. I sometimes wish, maybe I don't want to say this, but I sometimes wish somebody would cough in my face with COVID-19 to just show people that it's not the virus, it's the host, okay? I'm not scared to be exposed to this virus because I have a strong immune system, okay? And by the way, I'm not advocating that, please. I'm not gonna let anybody cough in my face, and I'm following the rules. But I know even if I am exposed to it, which I eventually will be, God gifted me with an immune system, and I've taken really good care of it. and I'm not afraid of this virus. And we heal from the inside out. It's not about it, outside in. It's the virus. It's the disease. It's the symptoms. No, it's not about it. It's about me. It's about personal responsibility. Okay? Am I a strong enough host to resist that virus? So I think it's really, guys, time to start thinking with common sense and start realizing that, you know, we have everything inside of us to be able to overcome this pandemic, but we have to start supporting it. So Justin and Brian, anything that you guys want to add to that before we wrap up?
One thing I would say, and you know, asking all the people we come in contact with, and this is a question everybody that's watching this, that's going to watch this, should ask yourself. So think about this. If you're taking more medication now than you were 5 years ago, are you healthy or are you sicker? And once you ask that question, if you're seeing the same doctor for the last 5 years and you're taking more medication now than you were 5 years ago, are you really progressing underneath that doctor's care? And when you think about this, here's what I will tell you. I love my patients. I love my employees. I love my wife, my family. Nobody cares about you like you do. And this is your own wellness journey. And we all have to play a part in stopping the spread and flattening the curve, but we all have to stand up and answer for our own wellness. And it's our responsibility to make due-level choices every single day that are going to enhance our quality of life, because the more healthy we are, the more productive we are. And so now, as we're trying to get out in our communities and do more to help first responders and people that are serving on the front lines, we've got an obligation to preserve our own health. We've got an obligation to be the rock for our families and take care of those around us first. And every single day, we want to make choices that are going to allow us to lay our head down at night and know that I'm moving closer towards optimal health, not sliding further and further back towards sickness and disease.
And that just reminds me, Dr. Justin, that, you know, you have to ask yourself, do you have a doctor that treats root cause, or do you have a doctor that treats symptoms and effects? Okay. Are we all going to get sick at some point in our lives? You bet. Okay. Now, if you're getting sick a lot, you probably should question the way you're living your life, but we're all going to get sick. We're all going to have, you know, an emergency, have a broken bone. I had a patient in yesterday who fell and, you know, she didn't fracture her pelvis, but she sprained her pelvis really bad. That's going to happen. Okay. But if we're talking about a chronic disease, like we've talked about today, or we're talking about this viral infection, I want you guys to start thinking about more, what's the underlying cause? Okay. What's the underlying cause of your illness? And start attracting doctors into your life that will help you to change your lifestyle, that will hold you accountable to change your nutrition, that's raising your cholesterol or giving you diabetes or making you metabolically fat. Okay. So start to attract doctors into your life that are true healthcare practitioners, not just managing your illnesses and your symptoms and sickness. Dr. Justin, anything you want to say in wrapping up?
No, I just want to finish with, it goes back to rule one. You know, both Dr. Dane and Dr. Brian have touched on this, is it goes back to rule number one. It's all about perspective. And right now we have the opportunity to change our perspective, to look at our health differently. You know, we've all said it a million times. I wish I was more healthy. I wish I did this. I wish I exercised, eat more healthy. And the reality is now's our time to flip that thought process and perspective and saying, okay, what do I need to do now? Because there's going to be another virus. There's going to be another something that's going to jeopardize your health. And like Dr. Dane said, how strong is the host? How strong is your system? How confident are you in looking yourself in the mirror and saying, hey, body, I got this, you got this. Whatever comes at us, we can handle, because we've created the best opportunity in ourselves to be the best version of ourselves, both mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually every single day. So flip the perspective as we close. Go back to number one and flip your health perspective and start looking at this from a bottom up type of an energy, and put more into the system so that it will give you more when you need it most.
Awesome, guys. In wrapping up, you know, guys, we just want to thank you. And I would highly recommend you look at these rules, guys, and put them in place. It's going to make a huge difference, not only in your immune health, guys, but your overall health. Okay. There's so much chronic disease in our society, and it's really time to wake up and recognize that it's the chronic disease that's the underlying cause of the immunosuppression that now we're being hit hard because of this new novel coronavirus. So take this seriously, guys. If it's a wake-up call, then use it as a wake-up call. We all need a wake-up call every once in a while, and start implementing some of these health behaviors into your life. And by the time we all start coming out of your health, guess what? You're going to have a much stronger immune system. So Dr. Justin, Dr. Brian, I really appreciate your time today. I hope everybody got a lot out of the webinar. I ask you guys to share it. Go on to hww.com. We're putting a lot of resources there, guys, just to keep you guys healthy and safe. So we love and appreciate you, and stay in touch with us.
I'll see you guys on the workouts.
See you guys.